There's a mountain in South America whose summit has been isolated above the surrounding jungle for millions of years. Not metaphorically isolated, geologically isolated. A black stone plateau rising above the clouds like the shattered remains of another world, a lost world. Its cliffs climb nearly straight upward from the rainforest below. Sheer walls of ancient sandstone stained black by endless rain and waterfalls that vanish into mist before ever reaching the ground. From a distance, it doesn't look natural. It looks impossible. Like someone cut the top from a mountain with a god's knife and left the wound exposed to weather, thunder, and deep time. And standing on its summit, reportedly, feels less like climbing a mountain and more like arriving somewhere Earth forgot to finish becoming. Welcome back to Tavern Reflections. Pull up a chair, pour yourself something warm, and settle in beside the fire for tonight's reflection. Tonight we head into Guyana. Tonight we head into the Guyana highlands of South America to one of the oldest and strangest landscapes on Earth, Mount Roraima. This is not merely a mountain, it's a place where geology becomes mythology, where clouds swallow cliffs older than civilization itself. It's truly amazing. Where strange plants grow from black stones beneath endless rain, the kind of plants where you never know if they're going to cure something that we've been struggling with for centuries or cause something we've never seen before, where isolation lasted long enough for evolution to begin improvising. Jack Tucker once described Tepuis as places where the world forgot to finish explaining itself properly. And Mount Roraima, well, if you look at it, it's difficult to argue with him. If you enjoy strange stories, eerie reflections, ancient places, and darker wanderings through the edges of reality, more strange doors await at TravisSivart.com. Now then, let's climb above the clouds. The first thing you need to understand about Mount Roraima is that the photographs lie. Not intentionally, not maliciously, they simply fail. The mountain cannot be emotionally translated through images alone because scale behaves strangely there. The eyes struggle to understand what they're seeing. The cliffs are too vertical, the summit too flat, the clouds too constant. It resembles less a mountain and more a continent fragment drifting above the jungle. Mount Roraima sits at the intersection of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana, within the Guyana highlands. It's one of the most famous tepui, massive tabletop mountains formed from some of the oldest exposed rock on Earth. The word tepui comes from the indigenous Himon language, and it's often translated roughly as House of the Gods. That feels correct. Not scientifically, perhaps, emotionally, because standing before Roraima does not inspire ordinary mountain feelings, which can be awe-inspiring itself. This inspires mythological feelings. The summit rises more than 9,000 feet above sea level. That's almost 2 miles. Its vertical cliffs dropping dramatically into rainforest and cloud forest below. The sandstone itself dates back nearly 2 billion years to the Precambrian era, making it among the oldest exposed geological formations on Earth. 2 billion years. Human history becomes microscopic against numbers like that. Empires vanish faster than Roraima notices weather changes. Most mountains feel large. Roraima feels ancient. And ancient is different. Ancient things do not merely occupy space, they alter emotional perspective. Have you ever walked into a place and you just feel overwhelmed by the scape and scope of all the things it has seen? That we'll never have enough time, energy, or oomph to see even a fraction of that. Imagine approaching Roraima through the Venezuelan savanna. The grasslands stretch endlessly beneath broad skies. Wind bends through tall grasses and silver waves. Cloud shadows drift across distant hills, just slightly darker shapes moving across the hillsides. And there, impossibly high above the horizon, hangs Roraima, not towering like a sharp peak, hovering. Its summit often disappears entirely into white cloud banks, while the black cliffs beneath remain visible like walls of some colossal ruined fortress. A fortress of gods. Waterfalls pour constantly from the edges. Thin silver ribbons dropping thousands of feet into fog. Many never, visibly at least, reach the ground. They simply vanish into cloud halfway down. Everything about the mountain encourages fantasy metaphors because reality itself already behaves poetically there. The cliffs surrounding the summit are so steep that for centuries the top remained effectively inaccessible. Earlier explorers could see the summit, but they had little understanding of what existed above. That mystery became intoxicating. Victorian explorers and scientists became fascinated by Tepui during the 19th century. Their isolation inspired speculation about hidden ecosystems, lost species, and landscapes untouched by the outside world. And honestly, standing below those cliffs, you understand exactly why. The summit looks separated from normal Earth, not metaphorically, visually. Clouds drift beneath it, storms wrap around it. The upper plateau appears disconnected from the surrounding world like an island floating above the jungle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle reportedly drew inspiration from Roraima and other tapuis when writing The Lost World, about dinosaurs still roaming the land. His novel about explorers discovering prehistoric life atop an isolated plateau. Journey to the center of the earth. All these things. Heck, we might even look at Skull Island with Kong and Godzilla with this sort of amazing wonder. Now, modern science does not support the idea that dinosaurs survive atop the mountain. Though admittedly that would improve tourism brochures considerably. But emotionally, the mountain absolutely feels like somewhere prehistoric things should exist. Not dinosaurs, perhaps, but older rules, older biology, older silence. Climbing Roraima is not technically impossible. People reach the summit regularly now through routes guided by local Piedmont communities, but accessible is a deeply relative term. The ascent passes through rainforest, whetstone, cloud forest. Look that up. An incredibly alien terrain, and eventually, the world changes. That's the phrase repeated by many travelers. The world changes on top of Roraima. The summit plateau stretches across a landscape unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. Black sandstone, pools of dark rainwater, low, twisted vegetation, constant mist. God, I'd love to go there. Strange rock formations sculpted by erosion into shapes resembling ruined cities, sleeping beasts, and weathered statues. The rain rarely fully stops. Clouds move low and fast across the plateau, swallowing visibility without warning. It's so delicious just to imagine it. To be there must be awe-inspiring. The stone itself appears black because moisture darkens the ancient sandstone almost constantly. And we all know what it looks like when rain darkens it. Even a tree trunk, it all looks darker. In some areas, the ground resembles volcanic terrain despite being sedimentary rock, billions of years old. It is beautiful, but not comforting. That distinction matters. Some landscapes invite you in. Roraima watches you carefully first. Croker Nord supposedly once said there are landscapes that make humanity feel temporarily on purpose. That may be one of the most accurate descriptions possible, because Roraima constantly reminds visitors they are biologically out of place there. The summit ecosystem evolved in isolation for immense periods of time. Scientists describe Tempuis as sky islands because their ecosystems become separated from surrounding environments over millions of years. Many species found there exist nowhere else on Earth. Think about that for a moment. An island in the sky, cut off by cliffs and clouds long enough for life itself to diverge into new experiments. Carnivorous plants grow across the summit. Teeny ecosystems cling to cracks in stone. Insects, amphibians, and plant species evolved under conditions unlike the surrounding rainforest, almost 2 miles below. The summit doesn't feel dead. It feels experimental by something we've never experienced before. Cloud Source once claimed, isolation is how reality teaches itself new tricks. Again, annoyingly insightful. Because evolution atop Tempuis resembles nature improvising under strange constraints. Nutrient-poor soil forced plants into bizarre adaptations. I just imagine them as huge, giant species. But probably not, right? Carnivorous species evolved because the environment offered little nutrition otherwise. Carnivorous species of plants, not animals, though animals too. Rainwater pools collect in black depressions between rock. Mist drift endlessly through twisted stone corridors. Then we talk about the fog on the moors and that sort of thing. Imagine that. All this rain-shaped, twisted landscape that turns into silver ribbons of waterfalls coming off the sides that don't even seem to hit the ground because they disperse midair, creating clouds. Now, where they originated, where these rainwater pools collected, maybe a hand deep, maybe less, maybe much more. But they go through these little depressions and gather together at the edge and fall and become clouds. Some rock formations appear almost artificial. Erosion carved them into into impossible shapes over geological time. Arches, pillars, faces, broken towers. Walking there reportedly feels dreamlike. Who's ready to finance my trip there? Oh, I gotta see this. I gotta write a book there, or at least take notes for one. So walking there feels reportedly dreamlike, not because it resembles fantasy exactly, because it resembles an unfinished draft of reality. There are valleys of quartz crystal on the summit, shapes and sizes you've not seen before, entire fields glittering faintly beneath gray skies. Because remember, almost always have clouds rolling across it. Water flows over black stone, polished smooth by rain older than human civilization. Clouds drift across the landscape fast enough to erase distance suddenly. One moment, you can see miles. The next, nothing but white vapor and wet wind. Time slip allegedly described Roraima as a scar left open by deep time. That line stayed with me, because the mountain genuinely feels wounded somehow, exposed, like a scar that just wouldn't heal. Which I guess is what Time Slip was saying there. I'm sorry, yeah. Let's get back on topic. Feels exposed, ancient layers uncovered, and left vulnerable to weather. The indigenous Piemont people have long considered the Tepui spiritually significant. And if you saw it, you'd understand why. Roraima itself appears in traditional stories connected to creation, sacred geography, and ancestral mythology. And honestly, of course it does. Imagine seeing this mountain without modern geology, without satellite imagery, without scientific frameworks. You would not assume interesting sandstone formation. You'd assume the gods live there. Because some places trigger spiritual instinct automatically. Not necessarily religious belief. Something older, deeper. An emotional recognition that certain landscapes exceed ordinary comprehension. The Piemont stories surrounding Roraima often describe the mountain as connected to sacred trees, ancient floods, and primordial creation themes. Again, emotionally appropriate. Because the summit doesn't feel newly formed. It feels left behind. Not forgotten as much as withdrawn. Like the surviving roof of an older earth. That sensation intensifies during storms, and the storms over Roraima are legendary. Lightning rolls constantly through clouds wrapped around the cliffs, not above them, around them. So you've got this calm, flat plateau covered in mist, and these dark, lightning-heavy clouds around it, like it sent it down to punish people trying to climb its sides. Rain hammers black stone, mist races across the plateau while thunder echoes endlessly against vertical walls. If you've ever heard the bass drop and bounce off a wall and come back at you to leave a minuscule echo, now imagine that 1,000,000 times larger. This wall and the bass rolling back at you so you hear it twice. It's on a scale you've never experienced before. At night, the summit becomes even stranger. Darkness there is profound. There's no cities nearby, no glow of civilization, only clouds, wind, weather, and ancient rock beneath stars occasionally visible through moving breaks in the storm. Imagine standing there at midnight, cold rain drifting sideways, because remember, wind and a 1.5 mile tall solid wall does wonderful things. To the cold rain drifting sideways, cliffs vanishing into darkness at the edge of your flashlight beam. The sound of water everywhere. Beneath your boots, stone, older than complex life itself. From a time before humans, before dinosaurs, before most things roamed the oceans. That kind of environment changes people emotionally, not permanently perhaps, but deeply. It gives something in a way you've never had before, and it takes something from you at the same time. Because humans are not designed to emotionally process geological time, not directly. Our brains evolved around schedules, seasons, generations, lifespans, not billions of years. We time ourselves more by our bathroom schedules than geological eras. Places like Roraima force perspectives violently. They remind us civilization is recent, temporary, fragile, and strangely loud. It's one of the few places on this planet that makes you realize easier and more definitively how small and short-lived our entire race and history and species and evolution is. Meanwhile, mountains like Roraima continue sitting quietly beneath storms older than memory. The summit also produces a very particular kind of loneliness. It's not social loneliness, existential loneliness, the feeling that humanity itself is very small against age and scale surrounding you. The same loneliness we get a hint of when looking up at the stars and realizing that it took millions of years for that light to reach here. And perhaps that's why Lost World stories resonate so powerfully. Because deep down, humans suspect the world once contained more mystery than modern life allows. Roraima feels like surviving evidence. A place where mystery endured long enough to become physical geography. Even now, despite tourism and scientific exploration, the mountain retains atmosphere impossible to fully domesticate. It's like people that have stood in ancient battlegrounds or relatively recent battlegrounds, less than 100 years old, and they feel the depth, the weight. Now, look at the mountain. You can map it, study it, photograph it, yet emotionally, it still resists complete explanation. That resistance to being explained makes a difference. Modern life is aggressively over-explained. Algorithms flatten wonder, almost kill it. Insearchable trivia, spoon-feeding your wonder to you by your preferences, never surprising you fully, only feeding you more crap. But Roraima still feels larger than its facts. And perhaps that's why it remains unforgettable. Not because it's dangerous, not because it's unexplored, but because it feels ancient enough to remember versions of Earth we no longer belong to. The reason Mount Roraima lingers so powerfully in the imagination is because it represents something modern life rarely allows us to experience directly. Deep time. Most human beings experience existence in years, maybe decades. Mountains like Roraima experience existence in extinctions. That changes perspective dramatically. And it's more than just mental or physical or emotional. It's bigger than our existence, our perspective that we have. It's one of those deliciously, wonderfully terrifying moments where your brain expands and is quietly overwhelmed so it stays silent as you realize there's so much more than you'll ever experience that has happened before you. Anyhow, standing before something billions of years old destabilizes human certainty. Not in a frightening way exactly, in a cleansing, clarifying way. Because places like Roraima remind us civilization is temporary theater, performed atop ancient stone that will outlast us completely. There's also something deeply compelling about isolated ecosystems. Oh, they're like the best present of angel food cake of the soul. Humans instinctively understand that separation creates difference. An island evolves differently from a continent. A mountain summit evolves differently from the jungle below. Isolation creates uniqueness, sometimes beauty, sometimes strangeness, sometimes both simultaneously. And perhaps people emotionally connect with that because humans themselves are shaped by isolation too. Cultures, families, communities, individuals. Everything separated long enough becomes distinctive. The summit of Roraima is essentially a biological memory vault, protected by cliffs and weather, a place where life evolved sideways while the rest of the world moved forward indifferently from what was going on so far above it. That idea feels almost philosophical. And then there is the simple emotional power of unfinished mystery. We do whole TV shows on it that last decades. Most of the Earth now feels mapped, measured, explained. But Roraima still carries enough atmosphere to resist becoming ordinary. Some places feel ancient enough to remember versions of Earth we no longer belong to. That may be the true magic of the mountain. Not supernatural magic, perspective magic. The kind that briefly reminds humans how small, recent, and temporary we really are. And strangely, how beautiful that can be. Thank you for spending part of your evening here in the tavern. If you enjoy strange history, eerie reflections, ancient landscapes, and darker wanderings through the edges of reality, more strange doors await at TravisSivart.com. Jack Tucker would probably insist mountains like Roraima are less locations and more conversations between stone, cloud, and time. Cloud Source would likely argue the world still hides places too old to fully belong to humanity anymore. Both may be right. Until next time, mind the shadows and remember that the world still contains places strange enough to feel unfinished.